order?
Yes, please.
All right. Hopefully everybody got the agenda in front of them or got it in their email. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. I make a motion, we approve the agenda.
Okay. I heard Bob with the second from Bob, so we'll go with
Okay.
that. All right. And anyone opposed? Let's go that way. No opposed, none opposed. I'm going to do a roll call. I didn't list it on the agenda, but I'll do a roll call for the committee. So Mayor Sticks.
Here.
Myself here. Fire Captain Monday.
I'm here.
Thank you. Police Chief Rivera.
Here.
Bob Roper.
Here.
Bob Daddy.
Here.
And Councilmember Wyrick.
Here.
Thank you. With that, we have the minutes for the November 17th meeting. Any comments or motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second you, Bob.
Thank you. And then any opposed? No. Okay. We'll approve those by consensus. All right. And so with that, we can get to the items in the public comment, which we have on our agenda. I do see, I think, Suzanne, we had spoke, and I think you have a comment on something fire related. So you could either do that at this point, or do you want to wait until we talk fire?
Oh, I'd rather do it now. Then I won't have to.
Sure.
Okay, so I know that the city budget's very limited, and I was here during the Thomas fire, and I've been going to some websites, and it occurs to me that that one low-cost way to handle evacuation was, in that time and this time too, would be neighbors helping neighbors. So I'm wondering if we could create a, this could be a voluntary effort or maybe something city-led. We could talk about that, but a neighborhood phone tree where people are in touch with 3 or 4 neighbors on either side of them. And this is because my observation was during the Thomas fire, I guess Captain Monday, Celine Moomey, she's a good friend of mine. And we stayed in touch with her and she really helped me keep, informed. But I'd be happy to do that for 3 or 4 of my neighbors, some of whom are elderly. And it struck me that this sort of neighborhood phone tree would be super low cost. It could be informal. It doesn't even have to be city-led. But from a quick study of disasters like Fukushima, it turned out that people-to-people helping was more effective in getting people to evacuate quickly than a centralized system. And nothing wrong with the centralized system. It seems to me that the people who kind of volunteer to be part of a phone tree effort should be passing all that information along. But it struck me that that maybe we could declare, maybe in honor of the Thomas fire, like a fire prevention day or something, and get neighborhoods to exchange phone numbers and agree to pop by during an emergency with their neighbors. So I'd love to hear what you guys think of that. And it did also, a quick perusal of the website suggested that apparently emergencies happen more often than we think they will as well, in terms of evacuations, at least in California.
We got a few going right now, a few emergencies happening as we speak.
If I may say something, Suzanne, I'm Chris Danch. I'm the Executive Director of the Fire Safe Council. Also work extensively with Celine. And I'd like to talk to you about this and maybe working through us and you giving some leadership on that through the Fire Safe Council. We have a new website coming up. It's more interactive, everything else. So if you could just contact me at chris@firesafeojai.org, then we can talk about that more, because that would be more of a community-based thing that we can work together on.
That sounds good. I think it ties into the first item on the agenda, so we can kind of open it up to the group. We have 2021 fire season is the first discussion item, and we intended this to really be kind of a catch-all for any concerns, issues, work that we're doing, work that we need to do. And so this definitely ties into that. And so we can kind of open that item up. But Chris, I like that idea, and I think I'm sure when you have your new website, I'm guessing that the city council will support, us linking to that website and making the public aware of that. So, for sure.
I hope so.
Yeah, I'd like to stay in touch on that. So,
Most definitely. Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you, Suzanne. Great idea. Really appreciate you calling in. And yeah, thanks for being my neighbor.
Mr. Roper.
Just as you might want to invite them for a future call, but the Ojai CERT group actually
Yes,
did
there you go.
did
Papa.
this work before. They
Yeah.
set up their own phone trees and so forth. So we might want to invite them to come back, do a presentation, and connect with the Ojai Fire Safe Council. Together, I think it would be a good match.
Yeah, we had talked, it's in my notes, the meeting right before COVID, which is probably about a year ago. We had talked about scheduling CERT for one of the upcoming meetings when things quieted down. So that didn't happen, but I think it should be something we do soon, is bring CERT back.
CERT went through this entire process, neighborhood by neighborhood. We had the yellow cards, we had the windows displays. So we've had this in place in the valley for about a decade. I'm not sure if any of it is still functioning, but I really don't like to reinvent and rebuild from scratch things that we can at least maybe rejuvenate and get going. CERT was going pretty strong there, and we did have active drills with CERT. And so I would hope that when we go through here, we do that. I do have a request for some information though. Having gone through the 06 flood, and we've gone through the Thomas fire, James, one of the things that we always did at State Farm was we had a manual, we had a playbook. We went ahead and had people that knew what that playbook was. And then what we did was we had an after action where we took a look at all those things that worked, failed, could have improved. And since we have changed 15 or 20 city managers and community development directors and public works directors in the last 25 years, do we have any written continuity format? Because this thing about digging the hole every few years, reinventing it and going back over, it isn't going to put us where we were. I went to 10 miserable, horrible years of earthquake drills, knowing we were never going to have one till we had the Northridge quake, knowing we were never going to burn down Malibu in 93, 92 actually, until we burned it down. And all those manuals, all those numbers, all those contexts, all those, different ancillary things that we needed were just critical to us. We had it at our fingertip where we could go back and open the book, and it gave us a direction to go. So if we don't have that, isn't it time we start that?
Yeah, and I think one of the items I was going to raise towards the end of the meeting is I think our emergency operations plan for the city is dated from 2012, I think. And so it's getting up there in age. So I think that's something for a future disaster council meeting, perhaps, where we can review it and update it. But to answer your question, is we've tried to do a couple of appendixes, for lack of a better word, of key and critical information to add to that 2012 emergency operations plan. So we've done a couple of those in the last couple of years, but it's probably time to do a full review and update.
Yeah, I would love that. That'd be great. A playbook. And then let's practice.
And if I make
Okay.
another comment, some of my neighbors are a lot older and I'm not sure how capable they are of like the whole playbook thing. That's why I'm suggesting like a phone tree that somebody who is volunteers for that. I'm not saying reinvent CERT, Bob, because that was really well done. Just that we have some sort of action plan, at least individually. I'm kind of, libertarian in that sense. I would like to see people take action.
And Suzanne, I agree with you 100%. As a State Farm agent, I had to go to Ventura to get access to a phone because we didn't have phones, cable, internet, cell. We had zero. And that's why I'm always afraid of depending on that, which I know might not work. When we had the Northridge quake, we had 4 days of no power. And besides me, I don't know of anybody else in this community that has those old earthquake phones that operate without electricity. And so, we need a place to start, and you're right. So let's start with our book and get it going.
Yeah, when I say playbook, I mean for James and me. And if I fall in a hole, Greg, you're number 3, right?
On our disaster council.
I want to hear a big confirmed yes, Greg. Yeah. Okay. All right. Good. I'll try not to find the
I was
hole.
muted, yes.
Now he's
Just
unmuted.
want to be sure. And we want to know where you live, and Jose, I want to know where you live, and Harry, I want to know where you live, because we're gonna come find you.
Yeah, that's the fire item on the agenda. We wanted to go kind of bit by bit, kind of a recap, and then also talking about where we're at this year, because we do have some new players. I think even since the Thomas fire, I'm trying to think. We had Captain McNeil, I think, for fire. We had Chief Freihoff for PD. We had, I guess, Greg and I were here. But it is, to Bob's point of, for a small city, we do have a lot of change. So we wanted to talk because one of the things that I heard with the Thomas fire was when all that fuel burnt, everybody said, well, at least the one positive is we have no fuel for 5 years. And you look at the calendar, this is year 4. So it's like, we're getting to that point, and it's also one of the driest years on record, I think, is what I've heard recently.
So
So,
far.
yeah. So, I'm like, can we start on that fire, the 2021 fire season discussion? Yeah. Captain Monday, can you kind of tell us, like, what are you guys seeing firsthand? How's the fuel looking? What are the concerns?
I think everybody has seen that we haven't got the precipitation that we usually get. So we're still in heading towards extreme drought status, kind of south from like Gaviota, southward is where everybody's experiencing that right now. Our live fuel moistures are still climbing up right now, which is obviously a good thing until maybe first part of May, middle of May, then they'll start their downward trend, cyclical trend that they'll start heading down. So still everything is still greening up, still blossoming, still growing. And maybe we have, I don't know, maybe 4 weeks more of a potential rain season unless we get some later rains. Gearing up for our fire hazard reduction program season that starts right around the 1st of May, when all the residents will start getting their notices to hazard to abate weeds. And so that will start, kind of starts East County and starts working West County and North County. We'll have our seasonal hand crew. We'll start back up in May to full status. We will change our responses to a wildland brush high, where we augment more resources, bulldozers, aircraft to it. So that kind of all starts middle of May, first part of May. But that's kind of where the outlook is right now. Things are still optimistic for some more precipitation, and as things grow.
When's fire season now? People ask me. I want to see if I'm giving the right answer.
I mean, it depends on where you're at in Southern California. I know that Los Angeles, Riverside, and San Bernardino County are having brush fires pretty much every day, just out in the high desert areas. So I can't really say there's a true season anymore. But at least from the last 10 years or so, there's no real season where we get to take a break off. You get to Northern California, they do have a declared season because they do get the moisture and snowfall throughout Northern California. But typically our season starts at the end of May and typically CAL FIRE declares it. And that starts some different responses in motion from the state.
Do you think that fuel, like we said, that narrative of 5 years of low fuel, has it come back?
It's coming back in a lot of areas. Like you can see the vegetation is growing back in a lot of the areas. The one thing to remind you, yes, new growth is happening, but you have to remember there's not a lot of down and dead from the old brush that was there that had, whether it's needle cast, leaf litter, down trees, that fuel is non-existent right now. So you don't have those high hour fuels that would burn for a long time.
Do you see anything in city limits that we might be missing?
I don't think so within the city. I mean, yes, you have, the mountains to the south, mountains east and north, where, the brush will come into to the city proper, if you will. All those homeowners in that area do get the fires hazard reduction notice that they've always gotten to clear 100 feet. I think the work that you're doing in Stewart Canyon is helpful to stop those drainages and that leak into the city, throughout the city, where vegetation is growing, where it can kind of sneak through the city, if you will. But I don't really see a huge impact still with the young growth that's there right now. I don't see it yet.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Did I hear you say the notices are going to go out May 1?
They
Starting May 1?
typically come out in April.
In April, okay.
It goes for the Board of Supervisors for approval. Once the board approves it, and then they'll get the mailers going.
I have a question. Well, first, thank you so much, Gary, for all the work you've done and that people don't see. And then also when people ask me, so are we ready? How ready are we? What is the response? What's the best response?
What does ready look like? I mean, Ojai's pretty resilient. They've been through a number of historic fires throughout, the life of Ojai, if you will. I think that the preparation that the city does, the preparation that the fire department does, as far as the fire hazard reduction program that's our kind of our bread and butter to provide that separation between vegetation, structures, access that helps, by that time, if you will, on a normal summer's day fire, kind of all bets are off when you have a Thomas-like fire that comes through there with the ferocity and the winds that came with it. You're kind of at the hope that you can get enough resources in there to do something. But that fire hazard reduction isn't based on, a firestorm, if you will, Santa Ana wind conditions. It's just not built for that. It's built for your everyday summer day fire with normal winds. That's what that program was built on and successful on. So I hope that answered your question.
Oh, sorry, Gary.
Go ahead.
I'm going to give an update on the grazing program because that's a field reduction and vegetation management program.
Sure.
That is being launched this year. We were going to launch it last year, but some weird pandemic thing showed up and kind of to a halt. But where we are right now, the goal this year is to work a number of demonstration sites, which also are pilot sites for long-term collaboration and partnership. And we have working in partnership with Oak Grove School, Christian Murdy Foundation, Thatcher, Besant Hill, Ojai Valley Land Conservancy. So our pilot areas so far are approaching 1,000 acres of key areas, working closely with those partners and Ventura County Fire. So we have Celine and Kenny Van Wagel working on that. The fire department will be providing a variety of support for our efforts on that. And we are already raising funds to supplement grazing fees so we can spread this program. One of the goals of the program is to allow grazing to be used on smaller parcels that otherwise would not be grazed just due to the cost to the landowner. And so we're already starting to gain money to do that ability. before we even started, we've raised about $60,000. So we're moving on that. And Betsy, I believe you met our project director, Cole, up in Upper Ojai. And Cole Bush brings a wealth of experience with this up north, working with Marin Fire Safe and others. She was the original land steward manager on Marin Fire Safe Council's goat grazing program, which is today very successful, and has worked with CAL FIRE and authored co-authored papers with CAL FIRE. So on our technical team, we have Matt Shapiro from the UC Extension. Work closely with RMAC. So we have a really good team moving on this. But so far, we're meeting the goals of this year. We're going to launch the public campaign, hopefully by the beginning of April, with our new website, and start, as the COVID eases, have some public events where people can see the grazing in action and learn more about it. But for those who don't know, our ultimate goal is to establish as contiguous as possible a complete corridor around this area all the way down to Foster Park. So we're looking at ultimately, affecting many thousands of acres that can be. Grazing isn't the answer to everything, but it is a very valuable tool and toolbox for us. So that's what's happening there, and that'll go a long ways toward, particularly with our flashy fuels. KFA, for example, their property was right along 50. We'll be combining hand crews from the fire department and others to also do the work necessary there to remove anything that might be subject to an ember cast or something like this. So it's a combined program with other fuel reduction and vegetation management actions. So that's where we are right now. And we should start our first grazing next week at Besant. Hopefully get that in the paper. People can watch the goats and sheep being driven down the highway to get over there from where they are. So
I would say it's a perfect time to put goats into the rotation for vegetation management with this young age class of fuel to maintain, what what Mother Nature gave us, and now we can, we have a medium to maintain that with this young age class of fuel that is pretty easy for goats to get around and digest and help maintain it.
Yeah, and we have the skill set in this group to do what's called targeted prescribed grazing, which is very, each parcel gets a prescription of what's going to happen, whether it be goats, sheep, both, number of animals, duration, impact, all tied to what the conditions of that land are, and what is ecologically sound to do, and also meets those management objectives. So we have high hopes for this program, and it's been very successful up north. It's spreading, and we hope to become a replicable model down here in Southern California.
Hey, Chris, I live on Creek Road, and I noticed that the Rancho Real has a pile of really cute goats and stuff going on down there, and it says something about bush goats. Is that part of the group that's helping you out?
I believe that might be Ventura Brush Goats. That's Michael Light, and he is part of our team. And outside of the Fire Safe Council, we're actually looking at building a cooperative structure for all layers of the industry. So, and long-term goals of actually, having a substantial industry here, contributing food and fiber as well. So, but yeah, Michael is part of it. There's other groups. Ultimately, what we'll be doing this year is setting up the mapping of that we will need for an RFP process next year. So next year, we're going to go into a competitive RFP process to do this. But we pretty much know every grazer in Southern California, and most of the ones that are here are large, and so they don't come to something where they won't do the work to tie together 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 smaller parcels. Then becomes economical when we can subsidize that activity. So it's a community supported program that can hopefully we expect it to contribute significantly over from here on out towards fuel reduction.
Great. Thank you, Chris. That's really exciting and fun too. So
It's fun. Yes, it is fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the goats.
Stan,
I-
we're
is-
gonna put right down Main Street. That's what we're gonna do, right?
Oh, I think we should.
100 of them.
Is there anything new on the Arundel front? You know, we have those massive concentrations in
Well,
the
we are
south part of the city.
Well, you know, we're for what the Fire Safe Council's done is we have been performing, we're in the process of doing formal collaborations now. So on the CAL FIRE Fire Prevention Grant, it's us and Ventura Regional Fire Safe Council, which used to be Central Ventura, Ventura RCD, and Bell Canyon are formally collaborating on this, with RCD being the grant administrator. And we're making this as going forward as a county, but divided into our own little districts where we have things that overlap everything and then things that are specific to our areas. But we think that's our best bet to go after the funding that's out there in many ways, not all the ways, but we've got to do that. On the Arundel front, we're working with RCD and with the Watershed Progressive and others, looking at a formal collaboration, beginning with the possibility of a CAL FIRE Forest Health Grant to get us in where we can start building the capacity, because grazing can be a tool in the Arundel. I mean, you're going to have mechanical, you're going to have herbicide.
You're going to have to start with mechanical on the mature stands.
Yeah, but goats and sheep, goats can provide some of the mechanical as well,
Oh,
right?
really?
Oh yeah, they do a great job of breaking it up and settling it down. So they have a role to play in Arundel, and we've been talking with Watershed Progressive and others, you know, Regina and everybody, to how we're going to formally do this. So that's
I
actually
mean, we've been talking about it for years, and those thick stands just keep sitting there every time you go on Creek Road.
well, when I drive around, when I do my biannual twice a year drive around with the fire department with Celine. That's where we go. Look at that. You know, oh my God. Look
Yeah,
at this.
I mean, let's stop talking about it and do something about it.
Yeah, let's do something about it. So as you know, it's very expensive, but
Yes.
I think by us coming together under a formal collaboration, in fact, I've got the MOU right here on my screen working on it, but with RCD, I think in particular, and then key groups around key fire safe councils and in the Arundel area, groups like Watershed Progressive, that's the way we're going to tackle this. And so we obviously have an interest in it in the fire safety aspect, but combining
It's
that
fire
with
and water. It's fire and water. Yeah.
the fire and water. So we're going to put those two together and seek funding and support by putting those two together. Does that help?
Yeah, I've been here to talk about this for years. I'd like to see it start to come out.
Well, I'm new to the game, so I'm doing the best I can.
Yeah, I know you're doing a lot, Chris.
All right.
I really appreciate, and just one more question, Chris. So that sounds wonderful. What would be the estimated time frame? I know it's hard.
For which one?
Well, getting rid of the Arundel. I mean, I know that's hard to project, and yet off the top.
Oh, it's one of the issues is funding. Right now, we have part of what we're working on is just trying to build the internal capacity of the Fire Safe Council, because the funding and what has gone on for 20 some years, is not really what need to be focused on right now. So we're taking on much more complex endeavors and seeking the funding for that. The time frame is something where we will be aggressively pursuing funding as it comes available.
There's another aspect. Even if funding,
I can't give you one for the Arundel.
even if funding is available, and funding has been available sporadically in the past, one of the issues is the access issue, where property owners have been denying access for removal of what I consider a public safety hazard. And I've often asked for years, is there anything to be done either at the county level or at the fire protection district level to say, look, this is a public safety hazard. You've got to allow access. The property owners have got to allow access because it's a public safety issue. Are we still in the same place we've always been, where private property owners can be denying access on Arundel removal?
Nothing from the fire department nobody's ever denied us access into the river bottom, but we're,
I hear the watershed protection people talk about that all the time.
yeah, because I think, because then they're in there trying to mitigate it. We're not in the mitigation business yet to tackle Arundo.
Well, I do think, Bill, that one of the, if I have, it's never been actually stated to me, but I think one of the things that interests the watershed protection people, like Watershed Progressive, is to enhance the ability to work with landowners based on the fire safety angle.
Yes.
Well, we may get in the door with be able to knock on the door with the landowner agreement in hand regarding the grazing program, which opens up the discussion to other things. I think
Okay, that's a good point.
one of the
Yeah, thank you.
advantages of working with us is to tie greater access and greater acceptability to what we're doing by tying the fire safety angle to it. We're interested in just tying it together so we can get the funding and get the access and get it in there and get it done. So
As part of our playbook, we're not going to get this done in the next 3 or 4 years. That's just the way it is. That's the way it's been for a quarter of a century. Why aren't we taking active steps now? Identify all the players and get pre-permission. What we're going to do is we're going to mess around. We're going to go through years. We're going to do the RFPs. We're going to finally get some money. And then we're going to go back to what we could have done 3 or 4 years ago and lined up all the permission and get everybody in line. So why don't we earmark something, someone, somehow? Let's go in and identify where we have our biggest problems. Let's find out who the owners are. And why don't we start and have a discussion with them about permission? Now, we're not doing anything now. There's nothing that prevents us from taking that action today. So why don't we start somewhere? That's what I find about Ojai. We never start anywhere. Just doesn't go.
The fire departments, I'm sure everybody was aware of our continued river bottom fires that happened in the Santa Clara and the Ventura River bottoms from the 101 at Emma Wood, and then the 101 at Santa Clara to all the way to Harbor Boulevard. So the fire department we've started some preliminary discussions with the city of Ventura, Public Works, ourselves on kind of what Bob's saying. We've identified through our GIS folks who owns the adjacent property to the river bottom in that area. Majority of the lion's share of that property is county property, with a few private landowners kind of by the car dealerships a little bit, and then a little bit further to the west and to the north, there's some other private land. So we have a map that our GIS folks have done, identified property owners that we'll be reaching out to discuss starting to do some vegetation management in that river bottom. But like Bob said, you have to start somewhere, and it's a big bite to do it, because somebody's got to do environmentals and the whole shebang to start doing any sort of vegetation management thing. And so it's, how can we collaborate through big county, Ventura City, on who's gonna take a bite out of what to enable us to do some vegetation management with Arundo removal. And so we got some traction with Public Works on what they're able to do with some permits that they have, long-term permits of actually getting into like the Callegas River bottom and doing grading work, disking work, to have Arundo removal. So we started it. I think it's gonna be a long process to get it going, just with environmentals, CEQA, ARC, and everything that it takes to do vegetation management. Some of the opportunities we have taken from this past summer, as long as the wind is right and the fire activity and behavior is within some span of control and some limits, we've been assisting with burning that stuff up. So we've provided some more access for Ventura City to get their fire engines a little bit closer behind the golf course, so they can get in there a little bit quicker if a fire is going to stay small. The problem with the whole river bottom thing, it's not my backyard type of deal, because now you know what lives in the river bottom is going to end up on the front porch of the city of Ventura or the city of Oxnard. And then you have that social problem of nobody wants homeless in their cities. And I get it, whatever your view is on that is whatever that is. But anytime we have fires in the river bottom, it's a huge collaborative effort between the VCSO, Ventura PD, as far as it's an evacuation. We have to evacuate people from their homeless encampments, much like we would do to a neighborhood. So it's a arduous work to get people out of there. And then what are you going to do with them? And then they have their property there. But as I forementioned, as we've had some fires in there, we've used our bulldozers in the river bottom to make control lines to burn up some more continuous arundo. So we're not going back to the river bottom 3, 4, 5 times a week to put out river bottom fires. So we've been kind of doing a little bit of vegetation management under the auspice of a wildland fire, if you will, when the opportunity is right and we're not smoke's not impacting infrastructure, 101 trains, and citizens in Oxnard, citizens in Ventura. So unfortunate when we get the east winds, that's our best days to do it. And it's quite a crowd pleaser when that arundo burns. It looks like it's taking thousands of acres when it's burning a 25 by 25 spot. It's just super, it holds a lot of water. And so it catches on fire. It looks like you're burning down neighborhoods, and it's not that. And so we do have a lot of our trained staff from our wildland unit out there doing that, prescribing it, watching what it's doing, providing access, and kind of getting rid of it in one fell swoop. We've made, I would say, very good progress this past fall in getting some big chunks burned out behind the radio antenna that you see down there in the golf course towards Harbor, and a little bit more down there by the yurts where the homeless live down there as well. So it's kind of where we've started. Where it ends up in time, we'll see if we can get some traction through the other agencies, and somebody's going to provide the legwork to do the non-fun technical work, if you will.
Can I add to that, that in our discussions on the forest health grant as a beginning, there's other funding obviously to look at, but in that discussion with RCD and Watershed Progressive is the possibility, one of the part of the scope of work we're looking at is doing the feasibility of doing a programmatic EIR for vegetation management within the watershed. So along the lines of CAL FIRE's programmatic EIR. So that would, while we're aggressively pursuing the grazing program, which includes this year, assuming we meet our funding targets, we'll be out there with our landowner agreements and actually knocking on people's doors this year. But in start to know what we can secure for the RFP program for next year. We're working to streamline the process, taking steps to do that, because our program is designed to be continuous. So here on out. So having some kind of programmatic EIR for our watershed would make a lot of sense from the vegetation management standpoint.
Great. Really appreciate you, Chris. And
James, I know we're thinking globally. I'm thinking from Tiwa on Creek Road to Skunk Canyon Road, below Stewart Canyon. That's the biggest existential threat we have to our south flank on the city. When we have that wind blowing through there, we really have some issues. When we take a look at the water grid, we take a look at Emily, and we take a look at the water flow that we have from the Casitas charts, you're not going to find a lot of hydrants down there on that southern flank. And so what my thought was, and I should have narrowed it, was to find out Saddle Mountain, or maybe by Greg's house down there, up to Skunk, go in to find out who the owners are, and see if we couldn't put some type of a program together. When the Thomas Fire came, that cleaned that out. There were pipes, and there were bridges, and there were swing bridges and derricks. There was all kinds of things in the river I didn't even know existed. Now we have a arundo at the 40-foot level between Hermosa and on Creek Road, where Ventura Street come down, where Country Club is in that one little nice area there. We have some massive stands in there. And again, when we get that 50-mile-an-hour wind we had 3 months ago, all bets are going to be off on that thing. So I'm just wondering if we couldn't make something a lot closer, a lot more specific, and micro manage just a smaller area and see if we could at least come up with a thought there.
Well, I'm thinking,
That's part of our corridor that we're looking at for the grazing. So hopefully we'll be able to get in there, at least be able to talk to people. That's our hope. But that's one way of just getting our foot in the door.
oh, that's good to know. So that is one of the areas you're looking at grazing. Okay.
Well,
The other idea,
the idea is that we can drop off animals in one spot and pick them up at the other end. That's ultimately what we'd like to be able to do, right? Because transporting animals and changing infrastructure, moving it around is the big expense you have to take. Yeah.
Chris, does it work to have, goats and all that livestock in the creeks? Because I know we also have issues with, manure contamination in that creek in particular, right? There's water board enforcement actions on us on that stuff as well.
Well, that's part of the programmatic problem we're looking at, but animals can be used safely within the riparian zone. But then that's part of the prescription. So in working with it is what level of, affluent are we going to have, and given the certain number of animals being held there for a certain period of time, doing what, right? So generally, that is a very short duration kind of thing. It's usually done in an Arundo situation. It's my understanding, which is limited compared to my teammates, but is that the goats is like the first step of a 3-part treatment, right? And that would be them, and then mechanical, and then herbicide. So, so there's a reduction but with the animals, there's a reduction of the stuff having to be taken out. There's only so much a window a goat can eat without getting sick. So, but they do thin and they do break it up. That enhances the mechanical removal and the herbicide applications. That's my understanding.
the other thought I had, probably mostly for Mayor Sticks, Councilmember Wyrick, and myself, but I know Supervisor Levere had told me when I met with them a couple weeks ago to let them know if there was any key projects in the unincorporated area that, that we would ask that they prioritize. So maybe that brush clearance on Creek and in the unincorporated around us might be something worth bringing to his attention. So
Yeah, that would be great. Can we do that, James?
yeah,
I'll bring it to his attention too.
Okay.
yeah, he hears it from all of us.
We had a presentation to Matt in his office, and he pledged all kinds of things, and I'm going to go back and demand that he come through on some of them.
Nice. Well,
Then we're gonna get back.
Politely.
And we're gonna show Bob that it's done, right, Bob?
Works.
yeah, we got it started. Stewart Canyon. We had planned to do a little update on some of our projects. And Greg, I think I will ask you to quickly do it because we've talked a lot on this topic. But Stewart Canyon for us was our big kickoff on actually starting some of this brush removal. And I think most of this group knows about it, but it was $1 million grant. And if you've been out there, you can. At first, you're like $1 million for just for Stewart Canyon. If you go out there, it hits you how much has been done and how much has been removed. So, Greg, can you give just a quick update on that, and then that other grant we had applied for?
Yep. So yeah, we did Stewart Canyon. Phase 1 was the southern half of Stewart Canyon, which is middle Stewart Canyon. That's the city property heading down on Ventura Street towards where the junction of Fox Canyon Break is down there. So it's a few thousand feet. And it's, I think our total project, I was just looking, was about 230 larger trees. And then we had, a lot of underbrush that was significant all through that area. So the first southern half was just completed through December. And that was, about a couple of hundred of the larger trees. And then we had a lot of the understory removed. So that's just been, the restoration's underway. A lot of the seedling planting and restoration effort is underway. And then the second half of removals, we kind of orient around the bird nesting season. So that'll start up in October of this upcoming fall winter period. and go through the winter for the second half. And then we've also just applied for another supplemental grant for both the fish barrier removals, which isn't related to this work as much as the additional grant, which it's sort of really lesser money, $15,000 for Mexican fan palm removals that we have sprinkled around the city down on southern Montgomery. We've got some up Stewart Canyon beyond the grant, Stewart Canyon grant limits, but it's up kind of behind Bank of America up there. And then we've got some on the Oak Creek Lane creek that it cuts off that's not part of the grant as well. So we'll be pursuing as many as those as possible if we secure that grant, and to try to remove those fire dangers as well. I guess, the other projects that we're working on, Measure C is enhance the tree maintenance. So we're working on a lot of tree pruning at parks and street right of ways and street to other street properties. So that's underway as well. A lot of dead wooding reduces fire hazards. And then we've got some arundo removal we've done at some smaller areas up in Libby, and up on Topa Topa Drive had some as well. And then finally, we're doing our annual, weed and fire abatement that is due June 1st. So we're about just ready to kick that in right now. I think that's our primary undertakings for public works anyways.
Thank you, Greg. That sounds great. And this Saturday, people are working in Stewart Canyon. We can come check it out.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I've done that a couple of times, a pile of people. I think this Saturday, there's supposed to be a whole lot of Girl Scout troops showing up. And I don't know, I think a couple of weeks ago, we must have had 60 volunteers total doing all the planning. It was a lot of fun. And
Great.
so this one will be both planning and some weed control, depending on the size of the group.
Great.
All right, so the second bullet point under the 2021 fire season was fire hardening, potential fire hardening, which ties in with fire fuel removal. But I do think one of the topics that I was thinking about when we were doing this was, we made some code changes, and Bob would remember more than me, Bob Daddy would remember more than me. I don't remember how many years ago that was now. Was it 2 years ago?
We had CAL FIRE come in January, February, right after the Thomas fire.
Okay.
And so that's pushing 3. So then we started a few months after that, and it took us a long time. So I'd say 2 years.
Yeah, I think that's right.
I think that, I don't know how to say this other than I'm just going to say it. I've been asking and have asked for years that we go to Class A roofs. And we had Class C roofs. And I'd asked for years that once we had 10% loss in a roof, that we had to update it to Class A instead of leaving it at Class C. I have asked for the same 2 decades at least, that we have a sunset on all shake roofs, and we still don't. I even sent to the city 10 years ago the Pasadena formula that says they recognize they're in a fire zone, they recognize that shake roofs aren't good for the community, and they gave everybody so many years to get rid of those. We've never started that. So when we start talking about fire hardening, I'd like us to go back to the building board, throw a bunch of things in there. And when we have people that do a certain amount of retrofitting, upgrading, rehabbing, I really need to see these people put these 8th grade screens on the roof vents. I mean, we understand that embercast is a massive problem, and we're not protected from that. We have a number of things that we can do that are pretty low cost to see what we can do to mitigate the fire spread. And as we take a look in this community, one of the huge things that I'm very concerned about on Grand Avenue, and I've sent a number of people some pictures, and I'll be more than happy to send them again to the city manager. He can distribute them. We literally have rooftop to rooftop that are literally less than 18 inches, not from property line, from the adjacent roof next door on Grand Avenue. And when we get a fire inside the city with this wind, we're going to have some issues, and we need to start taking a look at some of those things we need to do now. It's not always going to be from outside. So anyhow, I think we need to look at some of the codes for hardening, especially those screens, and come up with some other ideas that we need to do. And again, unless you're a Mills Act home, we really do need to remove. We need to give a sunset time for the remaining shake roofs in the city. And Chief Monday, give me an idea. I take a look at those as flying, burning frisbees. That's, to me, in the insurance business, what shake shingles are: flying, burning frisbees. And they get behind the fire line really quick because they go hundreds of feet. So I don't know. Anybody have any thought on if it's Mr. Roper? Help me out here.
Okay, well, let me offer you this. I sent all of you on email a report from Headwaters Economics. And if you open that up, it gives you a great deal of information about the city itself. It gives you everything from the demographics. It gives you everything about the age of class of the homes, the poverty level, and so forth. It's a great report for you to try to digest and to be able to evaluate where do you want to start. Like for home hardening, you can see the age class of the home. So you can start looking at how many homes, what type of actions that you need to take. So this would be something that you could work with the building official in the city to digest this and have a formal recommendations come back, and then how do you implement it? So.
And Bob D, I guess is how I'll identify you. We did, and I'm trying to pull it up as we go. We did modify some of those roof issues you said. Didn't we do 10%? We did. If your roof is damaged more than 10%, you have to replace with the Class A.
That's correct. We went from a Class C to a Class A throughout the entire city.
Okay, I just wanted
And
to
then
make
we
sure. Okay, I thought you said we hadn't done that yet, and I just wanted to make sure.
No. Those are a couple things. Then we went from a 50% damage down to a 10%. If you have more than 10% damage, you must re-roof, and that's something that the insurance company will pay for. By the way, it will not. The homeowner will not be stuck because that's a code upgrade. So they will pay for the removal of the rest of the undamaged roof. What I'm talking about is let's get into the screens, and I'd like to see some other things. We still have way too many people that have got elevated steps and people that have, open bottoms. There's a lot of stuff that could be improved. And we don't have to go make everybody do it, but if people are going to be doing certain things, let's make sure it's in the code for them. And again, we're still allowing people to replace shingles with shingles. I don't know why we would do that.
Yeah. All right. Any other thoughts or comments on potential fire hardening, or anybody see anything else that that we should focus on in coming months or this year?
Well, as part of this CAL FIRE and previous grant requests, we've been looking at funds for, and I think it may come together with the rest of the county on this, and that is to get in the necessary training. Now, there's a couple of different kinds of training for structural ignition potential assessments. We've had people in our group, particularly our fire safety engineer, took the NFPA training, said it was very good. I've taken it online, and the Fire Safe Council does actually come out and do home assessments. We have a home assessment online thing on our website, which will be put into the new one and give some tiered recommendations. The website will have information for homeowners about what's the top 10 things they can do to their homes that are inexpensive. Those resources will be available in addition to other insurance issues. But we've been trying to get the funding to train a good number of volunteers that can go out and do targeted areas for home assessments. They do take time. You can prioritize those through the risk mapping, windshield surveys, et cetera. And then we want to work with our technical team to look on how to standardize that information. So something that'll give rise to other monies that can be used for research and code changes and things like that. So we are undertaking those efforts to give some kind of some sort of meaningful structural hardening assessment program that can lead to funding to help people get this done. But there are, like Bob says, there's a lot of things people can do there. The top 10 are actually, other than the roof, are actually very inexpensive. They just need to do them.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think part of it is just people don't know it. I put mulch in my whole front yard, and then the next week read an article that said mulch is not good for fires. And maybe everybody else on this call might have known that, but I did not know that.
Well, we have mulch around our place, but not within the 5-foot hazard, home ignition zone, right? So
Yeah.
how that's one of the home assessment things we can go do is talk about it. I mean, they take into account a lot of aspects, all right? And so not just structure, but also location, aspect, orientation, you name it, right? And adjacent structures and proximity, blah, blah, blah. So you have the radiant heat distances and convection, all that kind of stuff. So the point being that it's a very time-consuming thing to go do. And you really do have to target areas that you're going to go do it and approach people to have it done. But then the real trick is taking the data, doing something with it and getting people to act on it and find funding. FEMA does that sort of thing, but that's something, a capacity we don't currently, the city and we don't have to go after that. That's a lot of work.
Mhm.
And so we're going to have to back that up when we do it. But that's the goals we're working towards.
James, Bob R's hand is up.
Yeah, I just saw that. Bob?
Just maybe to help you with this group's blessing and the financial support that we receive from Bob Daddy and others, I'm about 88% done with that survey of the city. So I'm hoping to, at our next meeting, to be able to show you that data, as well as with this Headwaters report, we can begin to really factually give you recommendations on where to start the low-hanging fruit is, and you can start to prioritize where you want to focus your efforts on.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Bob, I forgot to mention that. That was one of the things that we're waiting for to help us, prioritize where we're going to go out and do stuff.
Thank you. That's helpful and useful.
And James, can we start, and Bill, start promoting easy things to do around the house at the next council meeting and just keep bringing it up? And
Yeah, I think that's what I was thinking too, and just Facebook posts and things like that, periodically reminding people some simple things that they could do. And I've seen some of those lists. There are things you can do for, $50, $100 that make your
Like take the leaves and all the needles and everything off your roof and out of the rain gutters.
Yeah. I think
Right.
Mr. Roper, I think, came to a council meeting, was it in like August or September of last year, and showed the gutters igniting and lighting the whole house on fire. And that was, that's a wake up call for a lot of people.
That's why I cleaned my gutters and put screens on them, and that's when I fell and hurt my shoulder. So I blamed my Cynthia. What are you doing? I said, I'm just, I'm doing what the fire department says I have to do. So
Old men needs to stay off of roofs, Bill. Got a couple of fatalities that way.
I know. I just hate to think of myself as the old man, but I know I am. Are we up to date with the hydrant exercises? The hydrants. Are we up to date with the program for hydrant valve exercising? Making sure they all work?
I don't know that we are. I guess, I've heard the hydrant stories. I have not done, I'll say I've not had the time or ability to follow up on it. I don't know if fire is looped in on that, or who else is involved, but I've heard about the hydrant testing and the inadequate water supply. I know I've met with Casitas about it like early on, but I haven't heard much recently. So
I just wonder if we were up to date. There's the best practices that AWA publishes.
Mhm.
We've been talking about that for years in terms of hydrant the valves have to be exercised on a certain program
Yeah.
every certain number of years. Each valve needs to be exercised. And it's
Yeah.
always been a issue of who's responsible for doing that.
That's what I was just gonna say is I'm trying to figure out who would ultimately.
Between the
be responsible.
CMWD and the fire department, it's always been an issue.
It's whoever the local water purveyor is responsible for the hydrant and its maintenance.
Right.
James, you have on the city website a very old listing of all the hydrants
I've seen it, yeah.
and a very, very old, and that's what I'm trying to get us to do
So
is
is the
get current.
CMWD have
Yeah.
a program now where they're up to, they follow appropriate practices of valve?
Yeah, I could follow up and that could be something, well, I won't wait till the next meeting to report back. I'll send an email to the group. I'll check in with Mike Flood and find out if they've tested or what the
And
status.
Greg, when they're putting these new lines in CMWD, are they replacing wharf hydrants that have inadequate flow when necessary?
They're not doing wharfs, they're doing all standard hydrants as far as I'm aware. They're not,
That's what I'm saying. They're getting rid of the wharfs.
as far as I know. Yeah, I haven't seen any new wharfs going.
Oh yeah, they're having to, Bill, because
Are they
they're
getting rid
putting
of the
in
old wharfs?
Yeah, they're putting in 6 and 8 inch lines. Those
So
are
they're getting
wharf
rid of the
skins.
old, they're getting rid of
Yeah,
the
they
old
have
wharf?
to.
Yeah, their flow's going to go through the roof. If you saw some of these old lines they're pulling
You
out, it's
can't do one of
insane.
those.
Yeah, they've just got, I think the old lines you see, even Ojai Avenue, 6 and 8 inch lines, there's barely like 2 or 3 inches of capacity left. So the new lines are going to be pretty impressive for flow and pressure.
But I
It'll be
mean,
nice.
but the old 4-inch wharf hydrants, as they go, they're taking those out and putting the 6-inch in?
Standard hydrants, yep.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
I'll follow up with-
We want Chief Monday to have water when he shows up.
Yeah.
Hadn't always been the case, right, Chief?
That is accurate. No, we're responsible to be sure that the hydrant exists. It's where it's supposed to be on our maps, and that it has the blue dot for so we can find it at nighttime.
Okay.
But all the maintenance valves, that's all the water purveyors.
That's CMWD that has to exercise them on a regular schedule. Okay.
All right, so yeah, I'll follow up with Mike Flood and I'll report back. The last main topic under fire, which was intended to be fairly broad. I should have kind of pulled it out to its own topic, but I wanted to kind of walk through with the group any thoughts on evacuations or shelter in place and any any ideas or thoughts that we wanted to put out on this. Obviously, evacuations and shelter in place are impacted by more than just fire. There's thankfully we haven't had to think of earthquakes for a while, but obviously that's always a risk, and landslides, etc. So I wanted to just kind of
Betsy made a really good point about running drills. Because remember at the Thomas fire, nobody could find the keys to the the storage for the generators at Nordoff at one point and stuff like that. So, I think Betsy makes a really good point. The mayor does that, periodically we need to run a full drill and make sure that everybody, there's gas available for the generators and people know where the keys are and the equipment works and so on and so forth. I don't know if we do that on a regular basis, but every once in a while we should.
Yeah, we started doing ones as the city, but I do think kind of our next step, which we did our last one for the city probably February of last year, and the next step was going to be trying to do some like interagency ones, because everybody knows about when Thomas Fire hit that at the shelter they couldn't get the generators going, but the reality of that was Greg, who was operating that? Was the school district, right?
Right. Yeah. The school, it was just a little bit, we just had to locate. They had generators and light plant generators, and it's just a matter of locating them. They worked okay once they found them.
Yeah, but maybe once they found them, it's kind of important is knowing where they're at. But
Yeah, can we do that?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think maybe
Thank you,
maybe
Bill.
what we could do is try to see if we could coordinate a day with the city, the school district, police, fire, and just have an exercise across the agencies and any other agency we can think of. But we could do that. We could try to coordinate something coming up. It is, we're taking some steps on the city end, and I know Chief Rivera just just recently coordinated. Another thing we couldn't find for years was the, how many cots is it? It's a decent amount, isn't it? Close to 100 or something like that?
We have, we're able to acquire 50 cots
50.
and 50 sleeping bags and a very large military type tent.
Yeah.
And we're looking at acquiring maybe some smaller generators that we can use at a given site for emergency purposes. So, and we're also looking for more cots and sleeping bags as well.
Yeah. So we figured out, we were able to create a spot here at the Public Works Yard where we actually have these, because there had been these legendary cots for years that I've heard about, that they were somewhere, someplace that we'd eventually find if we needed them. So the chief and Greg and I, we put an effort into finding them and putting them somewhere where everybody can, clearly know where they're at. So we're doing a couple of those types of things. But I think the other reason why we put this evacuation item in on this agenda, which is less critical now, but it was also part of the whole, like the realization that with COVID, like we were going to have to be like rethink everything, including how we evacuate and whether we evacuate in certain situations. But obviously, everybody's probably been hearing with the vaccine distribution, that is becoming less of a challenge. Although it still hasn't gone away completely, obviously, but so the idea with this evacuation discussion was to really, see if there was any thoughts or ideas on that. But I think to start, we'll coordinate an evacuation exercise, and we'll try to get all the agencies to participate in it. So we can tell the public too and announce it, and tell everybody to spend a day, getting familiar. So.
Part of the CAL FIRE grant going in, we're renewing another funding request that we started with iBank last year, which will be started up again now that the Catalyst Fund's back in action. But the James, I can send to you a summary of that transit analysis that we have set up with the teams that we have in place, and you can share that with the group if the group is interested. But sure, I can send that out and you can share with the group and tell you we should tell you where we're a little more detail where we're going. I've mentioned it in city council presentations, but here's a little more detail on what we have in mind that I think might be of interest to this group. So
excellent, thank you.
James, as part of that, we had for years we had Wayne and a number of the people that were our radio operators, and they were also our shortwave operators. They used to do 24-hour tests to make sure that we're up and going. And what we learned in the Thomas fire was the radio went down first.
Yep.
And I've been asking for quite a while, like they do on Highway 395, and put up those little nice blue mile marker type of road edge signs that say emergency AM 640. And it would be nice if somebody knew, you talk about the keys, the maintenance man had the keys to the generator at Nordoff. It would be nice to know who has the switch and the microphone, because we have not updated that recording in 15 years. It would be nice to update the recording. It would be nice to have somebody on live once a month for 5 minutes and put that on the website. Like it's a Wednesday at 7 o'clock, we're going to have a live radio test. We used to do, when I was a child, Connell Rad test. They used to do those tests all the time. I think if we get into the habit of having the radio work and somebody work the radio and let the people know where the reference and the resource is, there will be a time where we will need that. And there will be a time when the community is getting used to it. Again, we have 850,000 visitors a year coming into this town. And we at least need to let every motel, hotel, and every place that's going to shelter people from the outside, where they can get a rapid ready reference and they can get some information. They don't know now. So, Costa's got 200 guests there. We have an emergency. Everybody's going to get here by car. And that's where the radio is. And that's where it will still work. And so I want us to start putting this playbook where we don't wait, put everything together at once. We can do that next month. We can fold things in where we, graduate the steps in, just so it's not this huge lift all at once.
Yeah. Yeah, to your point there is, we tried to use the radio station more than we've tried in the 5 years I've been here, this year during COVID. But you are right, it was essentially starting from scratch for everything. And I think even, who is it? I think Wayne, I get Ken and Wayne mixed up, but I think Wayne has moved to Arizona. And
There we go.
Yep, and he was our expert. So, we had me and our IT guy figuring out how to use it. I don't know if anybody listened to it, but partially, like you said, is people don't know to listen to it. But we were every video update we recorded during COVID, when there were changes, we would also post the audio on the radio station for people that were tuning in, may have tuned in. They were like 10, 15-minute loops. But I think one thing I remember saying, let's see if we ever get a comment from anybody, like, I heard your radio update or anything like that. We never did. So I don't know that anybody's trained to look for it there. So one thing we have done for a potential fire is we ordered those orange traffic signs, and they're pre-printed, and they say emergency tuned at AM 1640. And so we have 4 of those and can drop them out, on the different routes and everything during a fire or a landslide. And so we got those in, I think, August of last year. And we got our IT person, James Hahn, trained up on the radio station. But I think there is something to trying to get people to pay attention to it and realize it's there. I don't know that a lot of people do. So.
Well, I think the mayor's correct. We need a test. How about throwing one of those on the road?
Yeah.
And we're gonna do a 5-minute announcement at 7 o'clock on Wednesday, turned at 1640, and send us an email comment. And then you're gonna know. You ask somebody, and if you put that up there for a while and you don't get a comment, then we need to do a different way of publicizing.
Yeah.
I can put a headline in the paper that, when you decide you want to run it, I can put, emergency broadcast test from the city is going to be this date, this station. We can go ahead, we can throw that in there. People have just got to get used to understanding the tool is there.
Yeah,
I like that. I think, the takeaway for me on this is I think we need to coordinate, a real on-hands exercise to try to, kind of get everybody back to paying attention to this after the last year that we've had. So.
And let's get the entire town to sign up for the emergency text. I mean, that's so easy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I know people, I don't know if anybody on this call has it. We started during COVID. Another thing we started was the text message system. And we had 600 people, I think, signed up so far, which is not an insignificant number, but, COVID information straight to your phone, you would think that there'd be more people than that signing up for it. And I think part of that is, for us, we do realize we did information overload at a couple points, but it was just the nature of the pandemic. But, we got to try to get people to pay attention to those things.
Could you, Bob, in the paper promote that number? Because it's a really great opportunity just to get information out immediately.
I print every news release I get from the city manager's office.
Thank you. Much appreciated. And
Thank
just
you.
so all you know, James and I, you're on, we're going to bivouac behind City Hall. I've already got people to set up tents. And really good coffee. You're all going to be there, right?
That sounds better than that no window EOC room that we have in the police station. Could not figure out if it was daytime or nighttime a few times during the Thomas.
And just keep communicating with the whole town, like the people.
That's a key thing we've learned. Yeah.
Right.
All right. So with that, there's a lot to it, but I think the takeaway on fires, we'll coordinate this exercise. We had placed an item on the agenda. Well, actually, before we move on to COVID, Does anybody have anything else on any of the fire issues?
Yeah, you brought up evacuation, James, and Mr. Roper and I went through a whole series of these things years ago at Fire Safe, and there was a bunch of different thoughts, you know, stay and fight or pack and split and a bunch of other things. I really think you need to put a tremendous amount of effort to be able to communicate. That Thomas fire was a mess. People were getting gas. We had gridlock. I mean, that thing was a mess. And I'm gonna leave it to some experts like our fire and our police and other people that are experts. I'm really uncomfortable about a mass exodus. I was even more uncomfortable when a number of people were told to go to the golf course and shelter in place only to find out that the gates were locked. So, you know, we have a little bit of a communication issue, and we have a language issue where people don't know the difference between Soul Park and Soul Golf Course, especially if you're from out of town. And so I think what I've gotten from the complete streets is people go, well, I don't need this and I don't need that. I know my way around town. Yeah, except we get 120 visitors in town annually for every single resident we have here. And I'm not really too concerned about somebody being able to find Matilah Street if you live here. I'm very concerned about when we have a weekend and we have a full weekend and we have thousands and thousands and thousands of people, whether it's a fire or an earthquake. I'm concerned about the city's ability to communicate about, do we just hang tough? We just sit here? Are we going to wait for the police vehicles and the fire vehicles to go through the neighborhoods with the bullhorns and tell people what to do? Because when we had that Northridge earthquake, we didn't have power. We couldn't even pump water to LA for 4 days. So, you know, I would hope that most of the effort has to do with the evacuation.
Yeah, I think key thing for me is the communication on it, and which is, like, to your point, multifaceted, and there's a lot of that needs to be communicated up front, because we're not going to be able to communicate all of it during an emergency, although we could also do that better through using the radio station and things like that. The other thing too, I don't know if the whole group saw, but the sheriff's department launched those high-low sirens too that are supposed to help. Or, you know, they will help, because when you hear that siren, you know it's an evacuation, not just a normal police siren. I know during Thomas Fire for me, I heard the siren, the normal siren, but I never knew we were evacuating. I came to work like a normal day. So hearing those sirens, I think, will make a difference. And we've been posting those on Facebook so people know what that new sound means. Yeah. All right, anybody else have anything on fire?
Hey, James, what do you think about doing a PSA on being prepared in case of an emergency such as that? If we know there's a fire coming towards our town, you know, what people need to do, you know, prepare your cars, put in your what you need to take with you, have your cars prepared to leave, just in case. We're doing, you know, we're doing a video PSA currently. We're developing it just for like vehicle thefts, but I think something like that might be good, just to alert the public, hey, this is what you need to do. Get your valuables, any important documents that you may need, and get them loaded up in your car, and be prepared to leave when you hear the sirens coming.
Yeah, agreed. I think we should do that. You and I can try to coordinate. I think there's little things, just like we talked about the other projects, there's little things like keeping your gas tank half full. You know, how many people first day of the Thomas Fire were in line to get gas, you know? So just simple things like that too. So
all of them.
I'll follow up with you. We can try to do something and get it on the
Okay.
channel and the radio and everything.
Yeah, that sounds good.
That's a great idea, Chief. I spoke with Celine, who's a friend of mine, Celine Mooney is a firefighter, and her husband, Chris Ford, about potentially doing a little video about packing the car, packing the bag, everything you need to have ready to go. So, they'd be really good on camera. So I can.
Yeah, and maybe also because I know when the Thomas fire hit, I was out in Thousand Oaks and we did a lot of evacuations, and we were banging on people's doors, asking them, trying to find out if they're still in there or not. And maybe something we can incorporate is having something put on the door, a notice saying, hey, no one's home, we're out of the house. That way we at least know there's nobody in there. Because there were a lot of times we were just trying to get people's attention, banging on the door, and it took a while for people to really come to the front and contact us to get them out. But so we know that they're gone. Whenever we did that, we went down the entire street. We would tie, plastic ribbing around their mailbox. To say, hey, we've already banged on this door. There's nobody here, or they've been advised to leave. So we can maybe put that into a video as well.
Yeah. Cool.
That'd be great. Thank you.
So last chance before moving on to COVID, anybody else?
Yeah, what's the chance you pick a date 6 weeks from now and you get your machines out there and you start telling people in 10 days, because let's face it, we put those things in the middle of the street 3 weeks before we have an Amgen bike race, okay? Put it right in the middle of the street. Now, that's pretty damn important, but something like emergency, we're kind of not there. So what about you move all your little message boards out in the street and put, May 22nd, we're going to have a test, emergency test, a test only. It would be nice to have the high-low sirens go off where people were aware. That would cause everybody to get on Facebook and Nextdoor and all that kind of stuff and kind of discuss and listen to it and understand and hear it and maybe be able to relate to it. And you could put in 1640. You guys could go with the broadcast and say, on the even hours between 8 and 4, we're going to have a live broadcast, turn to 1640 for 2 or 3 minutes. Have the sirens go, every couple of hours for a couple minutes, and then have the message board go. And I just think that's an alertness. We'll go ahead and throw something in the paper the week before, big headliner that we're going to do a test and we want to get comment, something. And I remember from kindergarten to, whenever. It was Tuesday, the alarms rang, they marched us out of our little classrooms, we all lined up and we went out and we had fire drills, right? Now we've got an entire community and we don't do anything. Doesn't make sense.
I agree. I would say, it's funny, I was looking at the calendar, that's about when I was looking. So let's plan for May 22nd.
No. I don't know what day that is. That could be a Sunday.
I literally counted, I think
it.
I counted 6 weeks and it was May 22nd. So give us, we'll have something to aim for. So we'll start preparing. If we need to, adjust a little bit, if there's something else going on that day, then we'll tweak it. But, we'll, let's try to do it. We'll try to make it happen. So,
Great.
Yeah, let's do it. That'd be really great. And just promote it. Everybody's got to get on the team now.
That's what's funny, that I'm cringe. The only reason I cringe is because I'm like, we will do radio, TV, text message, Facebook, website, newspaper, and the first call we'll get 10 minutes in is what's going on and why didn't anybody tell me about this? But
And it will be Sid. Sid will be the one calling you.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so we'll do it. I'm jotting that down we'll aim for that. All right, so COVID-19 update. To be honest, when we wrote this agenda a month ago, there was a ton going on. Lately, there's not as much going on and things are trending in a positive direction, although it hasn't gone away. It's not going to go away anytime soon, but Vaccines are up. Case numbers are down. We've moved to the red tier. The county thinks we'll move to orange tier in a couple of weeks. So there's really not as much to maybe talk about and or as many issues that we need to address, but we are the disaster council and we're in the midst of this once in a lifetime pandemic. So with that, I guess I'll just open it up, and if anybody has any questions, comments, or thoughts on the situation. Anybody have any?
And everybody speak at once. My understanding is we're no longer giving first doses at Nordoff.
That's correct. The hospital moved to second doses last week. Yeah.
And-
They've issued
and-
75,000 vaccine, or 7,500, I'm sorry, which is, essentially the population of the city, although they're not limiting it to just the city, but they've issued 7,500. They're going to second dose because the county doesn't have enough doses to be able to do both at the same time. But they're going to do second dose, and right now they're planning to go through April at least. So.
Okay, and again, if you could drop us a note.
Mm-hmm.
Again, you have access, drop us a note. We have a lot of people that don't do social network. We have a lot of people that don't do the TomTom. We have a lot of seniors.
Yeah.
And they're going to look at that print. And so, we can try that right where they're going to see it before they fold it up and put it in the bottom of the kitty box, but at least they'll be able to see it, right?
We'll do that, a vaccine update. Okay. All right, anybody else have anything? Thankfully, there's not a whole, or I don't think there's a whole lot to talk about right now. So.
Just encourage people to continue to be vigilant, because I just noticed a lot of people kind of, it's over, right?
We
Yeah.
hear it more and more, yeah.
And it's still there. So there's that threat habituation that's happening.
All right. If nothing else, we will move on to the third item, which is the County of Ventura issued their emergency operations plan, and they have a period that runs through, I think, the end of this month for public comment on that plan. I think most of us were here. The last plan that the county issued, I did not respond well. We had concerns. It felt to me like a lot of the burden. It was the memorandum of understanding between the Red Cross, the county, and the cities. And it felt to me, and we talked about this at Disaster Council with most of this group, but it felt like they were saying the Red Cross is maxed out, so we're going to push all the work and the response and responsibility to the city, but no additional resources. And so we made comments. We issued public comments on that. We advocated on that. We ended up getting we're the only city that ended up getting a kind of a waiver saying that that the county would share responsibility with us for the valley, and it wasn't just going to be the city being responsible. So so with that in mind, anytime these new plans come out, I'm going to try to review it, but also bring it to the Disaster Council just for discussion and any concerns. I read this one in the last couple of weeks, and I don't have any concerns. I think it had some. It's 364 pages. None of these are short, but it had a couple of worthwhile points. I jotted a couple down. One for us that is relevant is that the report notes that the county is responsible for the unincorporated area, but the cities are responsible for their jurisdictions, which I think we all agree with and don't have any issue with. The plan states that a key and a priority is pre-disaster education. And that kind of goes with what we're just talking about. You can't educate people during the middle of an emergency very well. So I thought that was worth highlighting because it's just a good reminder for us, although we just talked about it, but it's, getting the outreach and the information out beforehand is key. The plan essentially states that the county has adopted the incident command system that we all are aware of, especially, police, fire, and the city EOC use the incident command system for emergencies. And then it basically talks about how the agencies interact and how the cities will coordinate through the county EOC, who then coordinates with the state. So it just lays out a lot of what we know and formalizes those plans. But it does include, there's like 70 pages of just checklists for the different branches. So, there's, the logistics group there at both the county level and the city level. There's logistics, there's finance, there's, public information. They do have they have several pages of checklists for those roles that I'm going to make copies of, and we'll take a look at those at our city EOC and kind of make sure that we're hitting all the things that they've identified as well for priorities for each of those branches. But overall, it's a lot of information. I didn't see anything of concern. I don't have any recommendation to submit any public comment or any opposition or anything to the plan. But when we wrote this agenda, I hadn't read it yet, so I didn't know if we were going to want to make a comment. And so I guess with that, my recommendation is I don't see the need, but if anybody else, has read it and feels like there's an issue, feel free to indicate that. So anybody else have any comment on the emergency operations plan?
Are we still doing pre-screening? Is that still going to be a mandate? Are they going to modify that by the week as the hazard goes down? Because that is going to be the linchpin.
Yeah, I don't think they put that in the plan, because the plan is like their global document, and this pre-screen is particular to this current pandemic. So it's not part of their like standard plans, but my understanding is yes, they're still doing that during the pandemic. And Chief Rivera and Chief Monday, I don't know if you've heard any update on that as far as, I think, Bob, what you're talking about, let me make sure I'm right, is that when the pandemic started, the county had said if there was an evacuation that everybody would have to be pre-screened before actually being able to go into a shelter.
Pre-screen, and then what they'll do is they'll segment and direct based on the pre-screening, right?
Yeah.
That's going to be an extremely long process.
It's going to be extremely long, and I don't know how it's going to work. And I feel like if something happens, they'll try that and then they'll just drop it. But my understanding is that is what they're going to try to do. Chiefs, I don't know if you've heard anything different, but I never heard that they dropped it. So.
I'd heard that they're going to try to do that pre-screen and I don't want to hate to use the word segregate, but move people that fail somewhere else. But there's almost like for those of that have that, you should find your own place to go stay, like free for all.
Yeah. So it's not a good process. Hopefully, they announced that like 6 months ago, and we've been through some, we had a pretty quiet year, but there was that fire in Santa Paula that we worried about coming this way. We were starting to prepare, and we were trying to figure out how we would deal with that, and it was not going to be easy. So hopefully, as the vaccines kick in and everything, hopefully we never have to go through that. But it's not a good situation. But that wasn't in the emergency plan, so we could, I was going to say we could issue a comment saying that, we have concerns with this, but it's really not in the plan. I think if we were going to do that, we would do it separate, not as a public comment on the emergency plan. So anybody have anything else? Any other things jump out?
Well, just before this meeting, I'll just report that Chris and I, Danch and I were on a meeting. Celine, Chief Monday, participated in that meeting where we saw a presentation by a company called PicoGrid that basically does decentralized cameras, solar powered, that are satellite based, so can continue to provide early warning of fire breakouts and other anything that visual data can go into artificial intelligence algorithm. So it was an interesting presentation. I think Chris, maybe we need to circulate the white papers and talk about that after, maybe at some later date. But it was, Chief Monday, I just wanted to alert you that Celine was part of that discussion. Might want to chat with her about it.
We'll put together some kind of presentations. I'll be back in touch with you, Bill, and also with Celine. I just want some input from our fire safety engineer too, because she's more technologies as well. But
it was interesting. Celine talked about some gaps that maybe could be filled in terms of early warning of fire breakouts and things, and some of the deep canyons and things. So it was an interesting presentation, but I think we all still need to do some more due diligence on it.
I agree. But I think there's reason to be interested in it.
Yeah.
Cool. It reminds me, I think Southern California Edison was supposed to, I think they were giving, was it police and fire or just fire, that Edison was going to give access to their camera system too?
Well, we're also, Edison's getting ready to pay a fair amount of money
Yeah.
to various organizations that maybe could help deploy at least a beta test of this AI-based technology.
Yeah.
You already have access to all of Edison's cameras today.
Yeah.
Do we? I remembered that they were going to roll it out, and then I thought you're kind of jogging my memory that they had said that they ended up making it public, and there's a website you could go to or something like that.
That's correct. We can, Chief Monday can give you the website, but it's available today.
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
The only thing that was different about it's public access, but only some agencies have access. Some cameras can move, so we have access to move them. For not all, there's less than a handful that we can physically move if we wanted to. But there's cameras scattered throughout that are public access now.
Thank you.
On the new website coming out, hopefully by April 1, we have a page that, like Santa Barbara Fire Safe Council did and others, and we have an alert wildfire system page for all the cameras in our area that the public can click on. And it shows you the picture, and then it shows you the range it's showing. And so that'll be available for the public as well, on a easy click on page to do that.
Cool. All right. So that's what we had on the agenda. We don't have a future items list on the agenda, but I guess, well, actually, the next thing I think that we'll be working on and talk about is this this exercise that we'll coordinate. But if anybody have anything else, and if not, we'll adjourn. So, nope.
How often do we meet at this point?
I've been trying to do it quarterly. So if the group's okay with that, maybe we just say it's a quarterly meeting every 3 months. Next one will be end of June sometime.
Okay, great.
James, if
Just
I would just offer that I'm finishing up doing an after action review for the Talent Oregon area on their fire, and I'll be happy to share their lessons learned, because it was a interesting issue up there.
Yeah, for sure. Yes, please. Thank you.
I'm going to take off. Thank you for the council for letting me participate and listening to me. So
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
We'll
you.
see you in June.
Thank you to everybody for keeping us safe, and great plans and projects. So let's do it.
Yeah.
thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
Good
everybody.
one. Take care.